I keep thinking about the one thing adults are terrible at, but kids on a certain dark moon are trained to do from the time they can walk. Stay calm when everything goes wrong. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that somewhere out past the trade lanes, children treat disasters the way you and I treat fire drills or brushing our teeth. No speeches about bravery, no chosen heroes. Just habits. What if survival wasn't about one tough person saving the day, but about a whole group quietly knowing what to do? It really makes you wonder how different fear would feel if your first instinct wasn't to freeze or scream, but to check your buddy and start counting your breaths. And it gets even stranger when you imagine what happens if people who live on fear, pirates, raiders, the usual monsters of space, run straight into that kind of training. So pull the day a little further away from you, like closing a door down a long hallway, because we're going to step into a place where emergencies are as normal as sunrise. Out past the bright planets, there's a rock called New Carthage, where kids grow up under basalt ceilings, learning that panic is just bad procedure. And on one very ordinary school morning, a shuttle full of those kids off for a field trip and never reaches its destination. The pirates who grab them think they've caught easy prey. Scared children, one teacher, a silent ship. Instead, they're about to discover what happens when you kidnap a class that treats kidnapping like just another drill. Out past the bright planets, past the busy lanes of trade ships, there is a small dark moon where children grow up learning that calm is as important as air. They learn how to breathe when they are scared. They learn how to talk to each other when things go wrong. They learn how to listen for tiny sounds in the walls. That might mean a pump is tired or a valve is stuck. On this moon, New Carthage, danger is not a story. It is simply part of the weather of space. It is normal. It is expected. And because of that, people do not live in fear. They live in practice. This is a story about a class of children who are taken by pirates far away from their safe tunnels and soft classroom lights. It should have been a story about terror and helplessness. The pirates expected screaming and chaos. They expected begging and wild eyes. Instead, they found something very different. The children did not become heroes. They did not fight with tools or tricks. They did something much stranger and much quieter. They treated the kidnapping like another drill. They breathed, counted, watched, and helped each other. And because their whole world had taught them that emergencies are a shared task, not a personal test, the pirates' power began to slip away, little by little, almost without anyone noticing at first. This is how it happened. New Carthage was not much to look at from space. It was a small lump of dark rock, turning slowly near a pale gas giant. From orbit, there were no bright cities and no wide blue seas. The surface was nearly black, broken by sharp ridges and deep valleys. Sunlight fell in hard angles, making long shadows that cut across the stone like knives. Under that stone, people lived. They lived in tunnels drilled into basalt, and inside round chambers, lined with metal and soft panels. Air moved in careful loops through vents. And air moved In careful loops, through vents, heat slid along pipes in the walls. Light glowed from strips along curved ceilings, set to gentle cycles that told bodies when to wake and when to rest. For children born on New Carthage, this was simply life. The rock outside could freeze water in a breath. The vacuum could pull air away faster than a scream could rise. But inside the tunnels, things were safe, because everyone, from old engineers to small kids, treated safety as normal work. Every school day began with a short drill. Some days, the drill was about a leak. Some days, it was about fire. Some days, it was about a stranger in the dome, or a lost child, or a power cut in a hallway. The drills were never loud or dramatic. They were simple. Check your buddy, count your breaths, listen for your teacher, hands on shoulders, quiet feet. The children learned these things before they could spell long words. They did them the same way they brushed their teeth. On New Carthage, staying alive was a group habit, not a last-minute act of bravery. Miss Talia Brooks had come from old Earth, from warm air and wet clouds over Houston. She remembered long highways and tall green trees. She remembered thunderstorms and crowded shops. When she first arrived on New Carthage, the tunnels felt strange, like living in a quiet subway station that never ended. But she liked the colony's way of doing things. She liked that no problem was treated as shameful or as a test of pride. If a child forgot a step in a drill, they did it again, slowly and kindly. If a valve failed, the report did not end in blame. It ended in a new checklist. Ms. Brooks taught a group of 9 and 10-year-olds in Dome B's main school cluster. Her students moved between small rooms under arched ceilings, carrying light tablets and worn jackets. Today's lesson was a mix of biology and history, with a field trip to the old mining galleries on the far side of the dome. She had checked the schedule twice. As always, she had sent the route confirmation to the dome operations office. 2 shuttle rides there and back. 4 hours outside the main cluster, plus a lunch break in a small visitor bay. The children buzzed quietly as they lined up in the tunnel outside the school. Jaden, tall for his age, and always slightly ahead of the group, tapped his boot in a steady rhythm. Lily checked the collar seals on Priya's light jacket, her small fingers neat and firm. Mateo counted backpacks. Priya looked down the tunnel, studying the light strips as if they held a secret code. Quinn walked along the line with a tiny notebook, confirming names and numbers like a junior officer. Buddy check, Miss disappears. Buddy check, Miss Brooks said. Her voice was calm and low. Never raised. The tunnel air carried it without effort. Hands tapped shoulders. Pairs looked each other over, checking zippers, shoes, and the soft emergency bands at their wrists. Remember, Ms. Brooks said, field trip rules are just school rules. A few of the students smiled at that. They had heard it before. Repetition was part of feeling safe. They reached the shuttle bay in good time. The inner doors opened to a wide, rounded room with benches along the sides and markings on the floor that showed where people should stand when airlocks cycled. The shuttle rested in its cradle, a compact craft with stubby wings, built for short hops between domes and nearby stations. The group filed in with practiced steps. Jaden and Lily took seats near the front. Mateo and Priya sat in the middle. Quinn and two other kids sat near the back, where they could see both exits. Miss Brooks checked each row before taking her own seat by the side hatch. The shuttle ride began like any other. The pilot's voice reached them from the front compartment, steady and bored, talking about pressure checks and route clearance. The children watched the small view screen that showed the outside docking arms sliding away. For many of them, this narrow look at the bare rock and bright distant stars was still exciting. "You know the drill," Ms. Brooks said softly, as the shuttle cleared the bay. "Seat straps, quiet voices. Count to 100 if you feel any tightness in your chest." Some of the kids began counting in their heads, out of habit, mouths moving. A little bee. Others looked around, making sure their friends were settled. Outside, New Carthage turned. The shuttle's small engines hummed. The pilot began a slow roll to line up with the mining gallery dock. The first sign that something was wrong was not loud. There was a small change in the engine hum, a hitch, and a deeper tone. The cabin lights flickered once. Jaden felt it in the soles of his feet. The pilot's voice cut off mid-sentence. Ms. Brooks' head came up. Her eyes met Quinn's. Across the aisle, years of drills sat waiting in both of their bodies like tools on a shelf. Then the shuttle shook, not a gentle bump, but a hard, sharp tug that made straps dig into shoulders. The children gasped. Someone cried out. The view outside tilted as the shuttle spun a little. A bright shape moved past the small window, too close, too fast. "Hands up," Miss Brooks said, her voice still steady, but louder now. "Cover your heads. Count your breaths." The children obeyed. Almost all at once. This movement had been taught since their first days of school. Small hands came up, heads bent forward, eyes closed or stared at the floor. There was a deep metallic sound from the shuttle's hull, like a large impact. The craft jolted again. Gravity shifted. Some of the kids slid sideways in their seats, straps pulling tight and then holding. A low, grinding noise followed, as if the shuttle was being pulled along something rough. Jaden's heart hammered in his chest. His body shouted that this was not a drill, but the part of his mind, trained by hundreds of quiet mornings, did not freeze. It reached for the steps it knew. In 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4 he counted in his head, matching the pattern as Brooks had taught them. The air in the cabin tasted dry and a little sharp. The shuttle came to a rough stop. The shuttle came to a rough stop. The humming changed. A new sound filled the cabin, a deeper vibration from outside. Another ship had locked on. The pilot's voice did not return. For 3 full breaths, there was silence, except for small sounds of fear from the children. Brooks said she unstrapped but did not stand yet. Eyes up, please. Buddy, check. Hands only. Stay seated. Faces turned toward her. Some had tears. Some were wide and empty. But they looked and they listened. A few quick hands reached across the aisle to touch sleeves and shoulders. This is not a colony drill, Ms. Brooks said. She would not lie to them. But the rules still work. We stay together. We stay quiet. We follow signals. The inner hatch at the front of the cabin clanked. Locks turned. The air felt heavy. The door opened. 3 figures stepped through, their suits patched and marked with rough signs, faces partly hidden behind dull helmets and cheap filters. Their boots were scuffed and their belts were heavy with tools and shock rods. Behind them, a taller figure stood with arms crossed, helmet off, sharp eyes scanning the cabin. Everyone on New Carthage knew what pirate stories sounded like. Even children had heard the name Scarn Corsairs, spoken in meetings and quiet talks, a group that raided the weak and sold fear for money. The man at the back smiled with only part of his mouth. His hair was cut short, his jaw rough with stubble. He looked at the shuttle full of children and their single teacher, and saw easy prey. "Congratulations," he said, voice dry and amused. "Class trip just got more interesting." A few kids whimpered. Matteo reached for Priya's hand under the seat. Quinn's eyes flicked to Ms. Bai, flicked to Ms. Bai, Brooks and back. Miss First, Brooks and back. Miss Hay. Brooks stood up slowly, hands open and visible. Her pulse was high, but her breath stayed in the pattern she had taught so many times. "In this cabin," she said, "we speak softly. The children will not cause trouble if they are not harmed. Captain Rusk Vane of the Scarn Corsairs," though the children did not know his name yet, laughed a little. "You're in no place to bargain, teacher," he said. "But I like quiet. Quiet makes people easier to move." He signaled to his crew. 2 pirates stepped forward, pointing shock rods at the rows of seats. Brooks said before the pirates could shout, "Left to right, seat by seat, buddy pairs stay together, hands visible." Her voice had the calm force of a daily routine. The children moved as instructed, shaking hands and shallow breathing, but still moving, in order. Rusk watched with a small frown, noticing how neatly they obeyed her and how they did not push or tangle. He was used to panic. This was not panic. "Off the shuttle," he said. "Into the dock, slow and careful. Anyone runs, I start making examples." The threat hung in the air, but the children did not bolt. They rose in pairs, hands at their sides, and walked down the narrow aisle in a narrow line. Jaden counted the steps. Lily kept her eyes on Ms. Brooks' back. Quinn noted where the pirates stood and where the hatch led. As they crossed the threshold into the other ship's bay, the air felt different. It had a faint, burnt smell, like overworked wiring. The lights were harsher. The floor plating under their feet vibrated in a different way. Misplaced, Brooks had never trained them for pirates, but she had trained them for bad air, low power, and strange tunnels. "School program," she said softly, just loud enough for the first few rows to hear. Her eyes met Quinn's, then Jaden's, then Lily's. "Roll recall." The words clicked into place in their minds, like a key in a lock. Brothers, counters, observers, so others, reachers. These were not secret agents. They were just kids who knew who, in their class, was best at which small thing. Jaden was a counter. He would keep track of people and time. Lily was a soother. She watched feelings and kept them from boiling over. Mateo was a breather. He would start the patterns when others forgot. Priya was an observer. She loved patterns in pipes and screens and moving parts. Quinn was a reacher. Quinn's role was to listen between the lines and to speak if a careful word was needed. They did not say these titles out loud. They did not need to. They had played training games around them for years. Now, as fear pressed in hard from every side, those games rose up as quiet lines in their thoughts. They were no longer just a frightened class on a stolen shuttle. They were a practiced group in a new kind of drill. And they were stepping into the stomach of a pirate ship. The pirate ship was called the Bitter Lace. The children did not know the name, but they could feel the age of the vessel as soon as they stepped onto its deck. The corridor they entered was narrow and dim. Panels in the walls were mismatched, some old and dull, others newer and slightly brighter. The floor plates rattled a little with each step, as if they were not fixed down very well. The air smelled of oil, metal dust, and something sour, like old food that had been warmed over too many times. Captain Rusk Vane let his crew herd the class forward. He walked behind them, watching the small backs and moving shoulders with a hungry kind of interest. He expected crying, screaming, maybe a few attempts to run. Fear made people clumsy. Fear made people easy to harm into obedience. Instead, he saw neat pairs of children, hands visible, heads turning, but not jerking. They moved the way drill teams moved on ships that took safety too seriously for his taste. Faster, one pirate snapped, jabbing the shock rod near a boy's side. The boy flinched but did not bolt. His partner, a girl with dark braided hair, took his hand and squeezed 3 times, slow and steady. In, 2, 3, hold, out, 2, 3, 4. No one said the words. The pattern was old in their fingers. They were led into a larger bay near the center of the ship. Probably once used for cargo, now it held crates, tool racks, and 2 low-powered field generators that hummed with a tired sound. A section in the middle had been cleared. There were benches bolted to the floor and some old blankets piled near one wall. "This is home for a while," Rusk said, stepping past them and turning to face the group. "You sit. You stay quiet. You do as you're told. No shouting. No trying to be brave. We talk to your colony. They pay. You go home, or they don't. You do not go home." His eyes moved over the children, searching for the first to break. Fear was his usual tool. It made people see him as bigger than he was. It made his rough ship feel like a monster's mouth instead of a worn-out machine. Ms. Brooks stepped slightly in front of her class. The children need water, sanitation, and a regular light cycle, she said. Her voice was firm, almost the same as at school meetings. If you want them to stay healthy for Ransom, that is what you will provide. Rusk stared at her, surprised by how direct she was. Then he smiled in a cold way. You're not at a colony meeting, teacher. You're on my ship. Yes, she said. And on any ship, sick children lose value fast. There was a small moment where the air felt tight. The pirates nearby shifted, unsure if they should laugh or snarl. Rusk's eyes narrowed. She was right, and he knew it. Dead or ill hostages brought no money and a lot of trouble. He made a sharp gesture to a woman standing near a support beam. She had short black hair and a thin face, with a streak of pale scar along her left cheek. She wore lighter armor than the others, with a tool belt low on her hips. Sable, Rusk said, not looking away from Ms. Brooks. Make sure the kids get what they need, within reason. No luxuries, no stupid kindness. Just enough to keep them alive and quiet. The woman, Sable Quell, gave a short nod. Her eyes flicked over the children with a quick, measuring look. She did not seem pleased to have been given the task, but she also did not argue. The kids were told to sit on the benches. They sat in their buddy pairs, close together, shoulders touching. Miss Brooks took a place at the edge where she could rise fast if needed. Counters, she said softly, as if reminding them about a math exercise. Take a look around. Jaden straightened a little. His job was to keep track of numbers, time, and distance. He let his eyes move in the way their teachers had trained them for station drills, slow and not too focused, so it would not seem strange. He counted pirates in the room, 6 visible. Captain Rusk made 7. He counted exits. The main hatch they had come through, a side door near some stacked crates, and a ceiling hatch with a ladder going up. He counted the lights, the field generators, the crates. He counted his classmates, 12 children, plus Ms. Brooks. 13 in the group. He let the numbers line up in his head, forming a quiet structure he could lean against when fear tried to blow through him. Breathers, Ms. Brooks said, a little later, as the pirates moved away to argue in their corner. She did not look at Mateo, but he heard the word like a touch on his shoulder. Mateo began the pattern. He took slow breaths, letting his chest rise and fall in the counted rhythm. The girl next to him copied him without even thinking. The boy on her other side felt it and matched it. The pattern moved along the bench, like a low wave, quiet and steady. Lily watched faces. Her job as a soother was not to erase fear. It was to stop fear from tipping into panic. She saw whose hands were shaking and whose eyes kept darting to the doors. She leaned close to them, not with big hugs or dramatic comfort, but with simple words. Breathe with Matteo, she told a boy whose teeth were chattering. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. You know this. Her voice made the drill feel normal again. Priya's eyes went to the walls and the ceiling. She loved machines. At home, she would sit by the clear panels that showed the inner parts of New Carthage's air, circulators, and tried to name every piece. Here she saw loose wiring along the ceiling. She saw where someone had patched a pipe with a different kind of metal. She saw a faint shimmer around the field generators that said they were running at low power. She traced lines in her mind. This vent likely led toward the engine section. That pipe probably carried coolant. The floor near the main hatch had a slight tilt, which meant the ship might have been patched together from older sections. Quinn listened. Rusk's voice was loud and sharp, but Sable's was softer and more clipped. The other pirates cursed and laughed and used the same few words over and over. Quinn tried to hear not just the words, but how they were said. Rusk liked to sound in control. He mocked his own crew when they questioned him. When he spoke about the colony, his tone was harsh, but there was also something under it, a kind of old anger. Sable spoke less. She asked short, clear questions. How many? For how long? Which route? Her voice did not carry pride the way Rusk's did. It carried focus. As the first hour passed, a kind of order formed inside the pirate ships. Chaos. The pirates locked the bay doors and set a guard by the main hatch. They turned down the overhead, lighting a little, maybe trying to calm their captives, or just to save power. Sable brought a crate of water cartridges and some ration packs and placed them near the benches with a brisk motion. You, teacher, she said, hand these out. No mess, no waste. I don't have time to babysit. Miss Brooks nodded. Thank you, she said, as if they were at a colony supply station. She organized the kids to take turns. Counters tracked who had taken water. Brothers watched for anyone gulping too fast. Lily moved down the line, steadying hands and cracking small, soft jokes that made lips twitch in brief, shaky smiles. Rusk leaned against a structural beam and watched all of this with a growing frown. This was not how hostages usually behaved. There were no sudden sobbing fits. No children trying to become heroes. No loud bargaining. Instead, there was this organized, quiet flow of actions. It annoyed him. It also bothered him in a way he could not name. He stepped closer to the benches. Do you kids understand what's happening? He asked, voice low. You've been taken. You're on a pirate ship, far from your rock. Your neat little routines are not going to save you. A few kids flinched. Quinn felt the urge to answer. That was part of being a reacher, but Ms. Brooks spoke first. We understand that we are in an emergency, she said, looking up at Rusk. Our training tells us not to waste energy on panic. We will follow your instructions as long as you do not harm the children. That will keep your ship quiet and your crew rested. Rusk snorted. You talk like this is some kind of shared project, he said. It's not. I have power. You do not. That's how it works. Ms. Brooks held his gaze. Her heart still beat fast, but her voice did not shake. On New Carthage, she said, "We teach that power without procedure wastes itself. You can keep control longer if you let us use what we know." He glared at her, then turned away as if bored, but her words stayed with him, grinding against his old ideas. Later, when Russ called his crew to record the ransom transmission, Sable stayed in the bay with the children. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes drifting over the room. She had noticed something during the water handout. Miss Brooks had used the same few sentences over and over, in slightly different ways. Pass it left, pass it right. Drink slow, count to 10 between sips. Buddy eyes first, then your own. The phrases had a rhythm, and the kids reacted almost before the last word left her mouth. Sable had seen trained groups before. Soldiers, corporate teams. They had codes and drills, but she had never seen children this young move like that without shouting or fear. "You're not just being brave, are you?" Sable said quietly, almost to herself. Quinn was nearby, pretending to watch their own boots. The words floated over. "Mom?" Quinn asked, very softly. Sable glanced down. "I said," she repeated, slightly louder. "You're not just in shock, are you?" Quinn knew that look in her eye. It was the look teachers had when they had almost solved a puzzle. Quinn met her gaze, then lowered it respectfully. "We practice for many things," Quinn said. "It helps us stay calm. It helps us make good choices." Sable narrowed her eyes. "Pirate kidnapping is part of your school program?" she asked, voice dry. "Not exactly," Quinn said. "But being away from home in a dangerous place is, listening is, remembering is." Sable studied Quinn for a long moment. The child's breathing was even. Their hands were not shaking. Their eyes were bright but not wild. She looked over at Miss Pulls. Brooks, who was helping Priya fold blankets into neater piles, turning a corner of the hard bay into something that felt a little more like a classroom. "You're running a drill," Sable said, slowly. "Right now, with my ship as your classroom." Ms. Brooks did not deny it. "We are using what we have," she said. "It is better than freezing. When people freeze, accidents happen. I do not want accidents." "Accidents?" Sable repeated softly, thinking of the bitter laces, brittle pipes, and old joints. She thought of Rusk, who liked to rule with fear and sudden shows of force. His way often ended in broken things and rushed fixes. She had patched plenty of holes after his tantrums. Now here was a group of children, and their teacher treating captivity as another scenario in a long list of practiced emergencies. Not as a story of villains and heroes, just as a problem to handle step by step. Sable's gaze moved to Priya, who kept sneaking looks at the ceiling and the vents. "You," Sable said, pointing with her chin. "Little machine reader? What do you see that's so interesting?" Priya froze for a second, caught, then forced herself to breathe. "I see," she began carefully, trying to sound harmless. They're running low. The shimmer is weak. Maybe you're saving power. Sable's eyebrows went up. That was not a guess. That was a correct observation slapped down with simple words. And that tilt in the floor, Priya added, then stopped. Cheeks reddening. Go on, Sable said. Curiosity hooked now. It means something was patched, Priya said. Maybe the bay used to be smaller. Maybe the supports are not even. It's fine. Just old. She glanced at Miss Brooks, who gave her the smallest nod. Not too much, enough to say well done and stay modest. Sable looked around the bay as if seeing it new. She had walked these plates for years. She knew every strange angle by feel, but she had never put it into such simple, clear signs. You kids really do this as part of school? She asked. You sit in rooms and look at vents for fun, for safety, Priya said. On frontier worlds, we pay attention to systems. If we learn them when things are calm, then it's easier when something breaks. That phrase, frontier worlds, made Sable think of long ago, before she joined the Corsairs, prospectors, cold stations. She had grown up in places not so different from this colony, but without such careful teaching around her. Fear had been personal. Accidents had been fate, not shared responsibility. She folded her arms tighter, uncomfortable with how the children's calm pressed against old memories. Don't get clever, she said, more sharply now. You're still prisoners. Your drills don't change that. No, ma'am, Quinn said. They just change how long we stay. In one piece, Sable almost smiled at that, then stopped herself. She pushed off the wall and headed toward the hatch. Stay seated, she said. I'll make sure you get a set light cycle. Kids don't do well in constant gray. As she left, she heard Matteo quietly counting, leading another round of group breathing. She heard Lily checking in on a girl who was finally crying now that the first shock had passed. She saw Jaden's eyes flick toward the side door, then up at the ceiling hatch, marking paths. They were not heroes. They were not trying to overpower anyone. They were just refusing to stop being a class, even here. Sable walked down the corridor, boots ringing on the plates, with a new thought she did not like. Maybe fear was not the strongest tool in this ship after all. Back in the bay, Miss Brooks sat on the bench across from her students. All right, she said quietly. Review. We are in an unsecured environment. We are not in control, but we do have our skills. What are our goals? Stay alive, Jaden said. Stay together, Lily added. Stay aware, Priya said. Stay kind, Matteo whispered. Voice catching a little. Quinn took a breath. And stay in school program. Quinn finished. No lone heroes, no sudden moves. Shared survival, Ms. Brooks nodded. Good, she said. This is not the drill we wanted, but it is the drill we have. So we will treat it like any other. With care, with attention, and with as much calm as we can find. Around them the bitter lace creaked and hummed, old systems working hard. The pirates thought they held all the power with their shock rods and patched suits and rough laughter, but in the middle of their worn-out ship, A small, trained calm had taken root. Every counted breath, every soft touch on a shaking shoulder, every quiet glance at a vent or a door, all of it was building something the pirates could not yet see. A careful, quiet blueprint for what would come next. The next colony morning found the children still in the Bitter Laces cargo bay, though of course there was no real morning in deep space. Time came from habits and from the dim lights that brightened a little on a set cycle. Sable had kept her word. The overhead strips now shifted through a gentle day-night rhythm, not the harsh, constant glare from before. It helped the kids' bodies settle, even if their minds stayed sharp and tired. Captain Ruskvein had not softened. He paced in and out, talking with his crew, planning the ransom call. He wanted drama. He wanted New Carthage's leaders to feel helpless and scared. The children watched him with quiet eyes. They listened, they counted. Jaden kept a tally in his head of how many hours had passed since they were taken, based on light shifts and rough meal times. Matteo tracked how long the air in the bay stayed comfortable before it felt stuffy. Priya watched the way lights flickered in the far wall whenever the engines did a small burn. Quinn listened for changes in voices outside the hatch. Miss P. Brooks had set simple routines. Breathing practice, soft stretches so muscles would not cramp on the hard benches, little story circles to keep minds from closing in on the same fearful thoughts. They moved through these routines like a slow, steady tide. The pirates grumbled about school on a prison deck, but no one stopped them. Calm kids were easier to guard than wild ones. Later that cycle, Russ came in with 3 pirates. He carried a small recorder in his hand. "All right, class," he said. "Showtime. Your people need to see your scared little faces. Teacher, you stand behind them. Kids in front, close together." He thought the sight of a packed group of children would hit the colony hard. Ms. Brooks rose. Her heart clenched at his words, but her mind saw something else. A line of sight from the recorder to faces and to background walls and doors. A chance. She looked at her students. "Class," she said calmly, "line up as on picture day. Shorter in front, taller in back. Buddy pairs stay together. Remember your posture." The kids moved as if this were another school event, not a hostage recording. They knew that word posture had a second meaning here. It meant, remember, your signals. New Carthage taught children that, in some emergencies, they might not be able to say certain things out loud. There were drills where they pretended to be lost in a strange tunnel. With cameras watching, they had simple ways to share extra information without drawing too much attention. Small patterns in how they stood, how they parked, how they moved. Today, those lessons were going to matter more than ever. Rusk set the recorder on a crate across from them. It floated a little on its built-in stabilizer, lens glowing red. "Everyone look at the camera," he said. "You don't need to act. You already look pathetic enough." Some of the kids did look small and worn. There were shadows under their eyes. A few had tear marks dried on their cheeks. But their bodies held a quiet order. that did not match his cruel tone. Sable stood off to the side against the wall near a vent. She had told Rusk she should be there in case any kid tries something stupid. In truth, she was curious. She wanted to see what these new Carthage drills would do under a new kind of pressure. "Ready," Rusk said. He hit the record toggle. A small light blinked. He stepped into frame just at the edge, so his voice would be close. "Leaders of New Carthage," he began, Captain Rusk Vane of the Scarn Corsairs speaking. "We have your shuttle. We have your children. You're going to pay if you want them back breathing." His words were sharp, practiced. He had sent many such messages in his life. While he talked, Ms., Mrs., and B. Brooks silently counted 3 beats between each of her slow breaths. Her eyes did not stare at the camera. They moved over her students, checking them for readiness. When Rusk paused, he jabbed a finger toward the group. "Teacher," he said, "say your name. Say where you are from. Prove you're alive." Miss Brooks nodded once, as if at a staff meeting. "I am Talia Brooks," she said, voice clear, but level School Cluster B, New Carthage, originally Houston, North America, Earth. Her tone, speed, and word choices were not random. She put small gaps between certain words, just as she had done in special drills back on the colony. On New Carthage, emergency coordinators had trained teachers in how to send extra meaning in plain speech, a short pause before a place name might mark a number. A certain word order might hint at direction or distance. The rules were simple and agreed on in advance, hidden inside harmless teacher habits. "Students," she said, "please give your names and something you miss about home." First row, left to right. Rusk almost cut her off, but then smirked. "Fine," he said. "Let them hear your little sob stories." He did not notice the small tension in Miss Place, Brooks' shoulders, as she gave the children their cue. The kids knew the pattern. In drills, they had practiced sharing circles where each child's small fact carried a bit of data. A number, a letter, a direction, a status. Today the stakes were higher, but the steps were the same. Jaden spoke first. Jaden. I miss the long tunnel between school cluster and hydroponics," he said. "I miss walking it in 7 minutes when we hurry." 7. The time was not really important, but the number was. It could mark part of a coordinate, or a count of pirates, or a distance from the colony, depending on how the coordinators chose to read it. Lily was next. Lily," she said. "I miss my little brother kicking his feet on the couch at 4 in the afternoon and being too loud." 4. A time that matched one of New Carthage's shift markers, a hint toward which way the pirates had jumped in relation to the colony's orbit track. Matteo swallowed, then spoke. "Matteo, I miss the way the air vents near my bed hiss 3 times when the night cycle starts. It always helps me sleep. 3. Another small number, wrapped in a home detail that sounded natural. Priya's turn. Priya. I miss the machine room near my aunt's place. They check the pumps at every 2 hours. And I like to watch. 2. another number, another piece of the pattern. Quinn's heart pounded as their turn came. They had a more complex job. As a reacher, Quinn's lines had to carry not just numbers, but also hints about conditions on the pirate ship. Quinn, they said, I miss our class emergency walks. Ms. Brooks makes us practice moving from room to room in careful steps when the lights go down. I miss knowing that if the doors close in the right sequence, everything will be fine at the end. That sentence was long, but each part mattered. Moving from room to room suggested the hostages were being kept near a central corridor, not in isolated cells. When the lights go down hinted at power dips as a control point. Doors close in the right sequence was a clue that door timing could be used as a rescue tool. The rest of the children followed, each with their own small data wrapped in simple missing home statements. I miss the 5 birds in the dome garden. I miss the first 2 songs at morning assembly. I miss the way the big window in the library shows Starfield 7 at night. Numbers, directions, tiny phrases that matched drill codes. To Rusk, it all sounded like children being sentimental. He let the camera run, adding his own threats. At the end, you have 40 hours, he said. Well, send a course marker on a coded band. You meet our demands, or these kids start vanishing from your roster. He cut the recorder and gave a satisfied nod. That shake them, he said. Teacher, well done. You made them sound nice and breakable. Miss Brooks' jaw tightened, but she did not answer. Inside, she clung to the hope that someone on New Carthage would notice the pattern under the pain. Sable had noticed something, but not all of it. She had stood silent, listening to the numbers slip past. She knew a list of small numeric details could form a picture, but she did not know the colony's codes. Still, something about the calm way the children spoke, even with fear tight in their voices, bothered her. It sounded too practiced. As Rusk left to send the transmission, Sable stayed behind to watch the kids. You gave them more than feelings, didn't you? She asked quietly. That whole I miss game, that was a map, wasn't it? Brooks met her gaze. She could not admit it. She could not admit it. She also could not fully lie. Children remember better when they tie facts to feelings, she said. If they get home, this will help them talk about what happened. Sable's mouth twisted. It was both true and not the full truth. She let it drop, but her mind kept turning. Far away, under the stone of New Carthage, the Ransom recording arrived. The colony's emergency coordination room sat deep in the main dome cluster, wrapped in thick walls and backup power lines. It was not fancy. There were a few larger screens, several tables with built-in controls, and chairs bolted to the floor. The most important thing inside it was not machines, but people. Operators watched for incoming signals from ships and outposts. Pattern analysts studied long strings of data, looking for signs of trouble. Drill designers planned new scenarios based on old mistakes. Today, they all stopped their usual tasks as the message began to play. On the main display, the image of Captain Rusk and the line of children appeared. A murmur went around the room. then died quickly as the coordinator in charge raised a hand. Record only, she said. No live channel. They're not listening for our answers yet. That's good. We have time. Her name was Mara Chen. She had been part of New Carthage's safety culture since before Cluster B's current students were born. She watched Rusk with a cold, steady gaze, then shifted her focus to the children, slow it down to half speed. She said, "No sound, change, just image. Just image." No, the tech at the panel did so. The children's faces moved a little slower. Tats at the corners of their eyes were easier to read. Ms. Brooks' tiny nods and glances became clear. "Start a grid," Mara said. "Name, visible condition, posture notes, any signals, especially numbers and odd phrasing." They played the segment again, this time with commentary. "Jaden," someone said. "Slight bruise on left cheek. No swelling. Used the number 7 tied to a tunnel. Could mark distance or count of pirates they saw. Lily's shoulders tight. No visible injury. Gave the number 4 with a daily event. Mateo, breathing shallow but steady. 3 mentioned around vents at night cycle. Could relate to ship cycles. Priya. Eyes moving to corners, still curious. 2-hour pump checks. Quinn, Mara said herself, leaning forward. Listen to that. Listen to the word order. They replayed Quinn's line. "I miss our class emergency walks. Miss Maudie, Brooks makes us practice moving from room to room in careful steps when the lights go down. I miss knowing that if the doors close in the right sequence, everything will be fine." At the end, Mara's hand tapped the table softly in thought. "They're telling us they're all together," she said. "Not in cells. Probably in a cargo or central bay. They're telling us the ship has power, dips that matter to door locks, and that door sequencing will be key to safe entry." An analyst pulled up the colony's training codebook for hostage recordings. The kids' numbers lined up into a rough vector, a direction from New Carthage based on starfield references they had practiced. Combined with the course marker Rusk later sent, it gave a nearly exact path. "Old freighter track," someone said, tracing the route. "Slower than standard. The bitter lace can't push hard anymore. That is good for us," Mara said. "We can pace them. No need to rush and get sloppy." They watched the background of the recording frame by frame. A tilt in the deck plates, a visible vent. A shimmer from the weak field generator. Prius eyeline helped point those out. Field strength is low. A systems tech said, "That matches Priya's hint. They're conserving power, or their generators are failing. Probably both." Mara drew a slow breath. "All right," she said. "We're not going to storm this ship with guns blazing. The kids clearly trust slow, precise work. We match their style. We use what they gave us." She began to outline the plan. They would send a small interceptor ship, not a warship. It would carry a containment net, tuned to wrap around the bitter lace's drive section and bleed off power without cracking the hull. The goal was not to break the pirates. It was to make their ship behave in predictable ways. With a planned power dip, doors would unlock according to default safety protocols. On most vessels, even patched ones, basic life support and interior access were wired to fail open in low power states to avoid trapping people. "We need to know how long a dip to run," Mara said. "Too short, nothing changes. Too long, we risk their air or heat." Jaden and Mateo's numbers around 7. 3 and 2 helped there, combined with the timing of background hums. In the recording, analysts could estimate how often the bitter lace cycled certain systems. "If we catch them right after a minor burn," a tech said, "they'll already be low on reserve power. A 30-second dip might be enough to trigger door fails without harming support. But we should aim for 15 at first and adjust." Mara nodded. "We send a message piggyback on their own ransom band. It doesn't need to be words, just a simple pattern Ms. Brooks will recognize. Let her know the rescue will come with a planned power dip." On New Carthage, teachers had another small drill code, a set of simple claps or taps that could stand in for complex orders. If Ms. Brooks heard a certain tap pattern in the ship's systems, she would know to move the children into their buddy positions and stay clear of doorways at a set moment. "Match their culture," Mara said. "They trained for rhythms. We give them a rhythm to follow." Back on the bitter lace, the children did not know exactly what was happening on their home moon, but they trusted that their signals had landed. The trust was part of their training too. Days on the pirate ship fell into a strained ardor. Rusk and his core crew handled the main controls and plotted jumps. Sable managed the bay, the kids' water and basic hygiene. Lesser pirates drifted in and out, mostly to stare or grumble. As hours turned to a second day, the ship began to show more signs of strain. The lights flickered more often. The air in the corridors smelled warmer, like the coolant systems were running hot. There were more sharp arguments near the control room door. Priya heard a low alarm sound once and quickly cut off. Sable and another tech sprinted past the bay hatch, cursing about a regulator. The children stayed seated, but their eyes followed every clue. During a quiet period, Sable came in with a tool case. She set it down near a side panel and opened an access cover. "Something wrong, Ms. Biss?" Brooks asked. "Just a sensor being dramatic," Sable said. "You don't want the real problems." Priya watched as Sable pulled out a small array of parts. Connectors, wires, a hand unit. The angle did not let Priya see everything, but she noticed the way Sable's hand lingered on a power coupling. "Is your generator all right?" Priya asked. Sable shot her a look. "It's fine," she said. "Old, tired, but fine." Priya hesitated. "On New Carthage," she said carefully, "we learned that sometimes tired machines do better with regular rests, short ones, very planned. It keeps them from failing in a surprise way."